Hey everyone, Collin Chi, certified nutritional consultant, numerologer, bringing you another talk today. Today I want to talk about a super important revolutionary new theory in cosmology called the electric universe model. Okay, this is going to be the model of the universe that's going to destroy everything that you know about cosmology and astronomy. Is everything that you know wrong? Was Einstein wrong? Was Newton wrong? Was Sagan wrong? Is all of this based on the gravitational model that you know? Yes, it's all based on the gravitational model of the universe, is the ideas that you know about the universe. Okay? This new theory is called the electric model. It puts electricity at the center of its theories, whereas the other model puts gravity at the center and gravity in control of everything. In this electric theory, okay, there's postulates that Saturn used to be a sun and Jupiter used to be a sun. Okay, Jupiter and Saturn used to be stars in this theory, which is very interesting, and now they became planets. It also theorizes and explains the scarring on Mars that we see, the scarring on the moon that we see, the scarring on Venus that we see, the scarring on Titan that we see, that can only truly be explained by giant electric currents hitting those planets, not comets, slowly colliding and creating the craters and stuff like that. These planets have changed dramatically over the course of time, and what this electric model also theorizes and sees correlation with is ancient mythology, okay? So they're explaining the ancient petroglyphs of mankind in Egypt, in Sumeria, in Babylonia, in China, all over the world. These two symbols exist called the wheel in the sky and the serpent eating its tail and the dragon. Those three we are beginning to explain as electric arcs and electric currents and electric phenomena that was happening in the ancient sky when those people were living. Okay, when those cultures were thriving, the sky was very different in this theory. Okay, so the wheel in the sky, okay, it's basically a dot with a circle around it and some light streamers coming off of it, and then another circle around that. Kind of looks like a sun or like a wheel, like a traditional, but yet it doesn't look like a wheel and it doesn't look like the sun. So it's this in-between kind of image. I'll put a picture somewhere below, or there might be a picture for the preview picture of this video or whatever to show you that. But take a look below if it's not in the front. But so that is supposedly a symbol of electric discharge phenomena that was happening when there was a conjunction between Saturn and Mars and Venus, and electric currents were flowing between them, and these giant lightning bolts in vast distances of space hitting these planets because of the electrical differences between these planets creates this plasma discharge that they theorize is that wheel in the sky symbol. And because their mythology and their explanations go along with these symbols too, and what the Australian Aborigines know of as used to be two suns. So Saturn was the sun, and we had another sun, the sun that you know of today. And we had two suns. And ancient cultures worshipped Saturn. In Rome was called Saturnia. All ancient religions come originally from Saturn worship, especially Islam, Christianity, and Judaism all come from Saturn worship, because we originally worshiped that as the sun, and these ancient cultures called Saturn the primeval sun, the better sun, the central sun. It was the center of their universe. So imagine that the sky was different in 2, 3, 4, 5,000 up to 12,000 years ago, and there were these crazy events in the sky, and our planets and suns and stars were in a different position, and these astronomical events occurred, and it created this explosion of imagination in these ancient cultures to describe what was happening, draw it, write about it, And so mythology is thought to be real stuff, not myth. Mythology was modeling and describing what was happening in the heavens, in the astronomical atmosphere out there. Okay, and they described Saturn as their god. They were worshiping Saturn more than the sun that we worship now. So all the attributions to Saturn were transferred to our sun now, and they describe how Jupiter and the sun we know of now destroyed Saturn and cast Saturn out or whatever, and Saturn is considered Satan, etc. So the wheel in the sky, okay? A phenomena, it looks exactly the same as electric discharges in plasma discharges, plasma physics in laboratories. That symbol. They also explain that serpent eating its tail as part of that process too. A plasma tail looks like that. The cone head kind of shapes that the Egyptians wear, the crowns, are theorized to be that plasma. So plasma is 99.9% of the visible universe is plasma. Okay, so and what we see out there in the universe in radio telescopes and telescopes nowadays are really throwing in the face of the gravitational traditional model of astronomy that we can't explain pulsars. We can't truly explain black holes. Everything we think we know, then we discover a new thing and we're like, this gravitational model just doesn't cut it and doesn't explain all these things. It doesn't explain sunspots, okay? It doesn't explain these things here: heavy elements, solar spectrum, neutrino deficiency, and variability. So I'm also going to talk about the fusion model of the sun is kaput possibly as well. It might be done based on this electric model, that the sun is an electric anode and it's just simply reacting to electric, it's basically electric discharge is what it's reacting to electricity coming from elsewhere and discharging. And this explains sunspots much better than our regular fusion model. Okay, so I'm going to explain that too. But these things cannot be accounted for in our traditional model just related to the sun. So the solar atmosphere, the differential. So in the solar atmosphere, it's actually hotter like miles and miles outside of the sun than it is at the surface of the sun. How do you explain this? Unless electricity and energy is coming from another place and the sun is simply reacting to that energy. Differential rotation latitude, differential rotation by latitude and differential rotation by depth cannot be explained by the gravitational traditional model of the sun. Equatorial plasma torus, the sunspots, the sunspot migration, sunspot penumbra, sunspot cycles, magnetic field strength, even magnetic field helioseismology, solar density, and changing size of the sun. None of these can be explained by our traditional nuclear fusion idea of the sun. So our idea is that at the center, hydrogen and helium are being fused together and is creating this offshoot of energy, and that's what fuels the sun. But it doesn't make sense, and these guys prove it. Like I said, look at Thornhill, look at Talbot. These guys know what's going on, I think. So sunspots, okay, why are sunspots, I'm going to get back to those other things, okay, but sunspots are black at the center of them, and they're actually colder right there than they are in the surrounding outpouring that's coming off of them. This does not make sense. The core should be warmer. Okay, the core should be hotter than the surface, and the levels way outside of the sun should not be hotter than the surface of the sun. This doesn't make any sense. Okay, so is the nuclear fusion model wrong? You might want to look into this stuff. So again, getting back to the symbols, okay? So the symbol of the dragon, we cannot explain where it came from, how it started. Some people think maybe there used to be actually dragons on the earth, those type of creatures, serpents, like Loch Ness monsters type, things, living amongst humans, and that's where that came from. But this other theory puts the dragon at the center of the ideas about electric discharge also, because dragon actually looks similar to electric discharge, and how the dragons and how the planet Venus was described in ancient times. Okay, all these ancient cultures described it as this Venus, and which Venus is also in this model thought to be a comet, not a planet. A comet coming from Saturn when Saturn exploded, and that's why Saturn has rings. Why does Saturn have rings? There was some kind of explosion at some point that created these rings, right? So none of the other planets have these strange rings. And so but before I get into that Venus thing, this makes me think about astrology mentioning that our souls begin their journey descending from Saturn, because the ancients put Saturn at the center of their universe. It was their sun. They worshipped it as a sun because they called it a sun. Okay? So that would make sense with our traditional ideas about religion, astrology, astronomy, astrotheology. If Jesus was all this got transferred to the sun, like I said, the sun we know of now. Helios or Helios was really a description of Saturn, okay? But I don't know, there's too many ideas flowing through my brain right now. I'm getting constipated in my mind here, but like I said, our souls coming from the rings of Saturn in the prima mobile or prima mobile. Ideas about astrology makes some sense if Saturn used to be at the center of our solar system, okay? And if it used to be a star. But Venus is described in Babylonia as, in Sumeria as Inanna, the god Inanna, is described the same way as Sekhmet. And Ishtar is in Egyptian. Sekhmet is the Egyptian Venus. And Inanna is the Sumerian. And Ishtar is the Babylonian. Okay, and they all describe Venus as the same way. This bearded serpent, or this fiery serpent, or this this thing that is seeming to be like an electric discharge phenomena of the planets and these conjunctions and these crazy events that happen. And like I said, why did they come up with this? They have this outpouring of imagination of coming up with all this mythology. It was based on astronomical events. So they describe it like a dragon sounds, or like a snake. Why do the Egyptians have the snake right here on their head? Why did they worship the serpent? This was the god Venus. Venus was somehow devastating the earth and changing the earth and maybe creating these catastrophes on earth because it was flung out from Saturn as a comet. And in ancient cultures, they were very afraid of comets. Why? Something major happened in the skies that created devastation on the earth. That is why they wrote about this stuff. The bearded, the Venus, the bearded, the fiery serpent, these all look like a dragon or a serpent, okay? This is the plasma discharge coming from the planet. So again, moving forward with that, okay? So this is hard to explain stuff because I'm not a physicist, I'm not a cosmologist, I'm just a normal guy, folks. So if you want more information, go to the Thunderbolts Project website, check it out. I'm going to give you a good overview here, though. Okay, so what else? The electric model, okay, again, explains the scarring. Giant scarring, equatorial scarring on Mars, Venus, these planets, Titan. How did this occur? It's not water on carving out lake and river looking structures on Mars. However, Mars is thought to used to have a atmosphere similar to the Earth. So that's interesting. But these phenomena can only occur from electricity. So also comets, the standard model for comets doesn't make sense because of our new discoveries. So they shot a a copper rod at a comet, basically, and they proved that it created this giant electric discharge, and showing that comets are electrically charged, and all these planets and stars are all electrically charged. Electric phenomena is happening. And this giant, and they didn't expect that. The standard model describes comets as the comet tail, as just ice melting off the comet, and that's what a comet tail is. No, it's actually a filamentary structures like light bulbs, like electricity, electric currents, coming off, and as the comet is discharging its electricity, as the electricity is changing as it's getting closer to the sun in its orbit. Okay, it's more maybe negative out towards away from the sun, and then it's becoming more positive as it goes towards the sun, or vice versa. And it's discharging, and you see these electrical comet tails coming off comets. Okay, so they've shown that. So, more about Saturn. It's thought and it's theorized that all the water and the salt that's in the oceans on Earth, how did all that get here? Some people explained it through comets, shedding their water and ice, but comets don't have much water because, whatever is there is theorized to burn off or whatever as they're coming into orbit. But again, it's electric discharge. But so the comets don't have much water at all, so it can't be water being deposited from that. And comets don't have much sodium or chloride. And this is what makes up our oceans. How did all this water get here? They theorized that it all came from Saturn. When Saturn's atmosphere was somehow, before when it was a sun, then it became a planet. Somehow the atmosphere of Saturn, because suns and stars have atmospheres as well, was shedding off this water, and that is what gave us all the water on the planet Earth. Because Saturn's rings are actually all frozen ice. That's what frozen ice chunks, going around Saturn. That's what actually those rings are. And then the gap in the rings is actually the moons that orbit Saturn. So these are all some awesome theories that really explain a lot of things that we can't explain with our traditional model. Again, I don't know, I don't know all of this stuff, but at least I'm giving you some ideas. So Einstein himself said that he wasn't satisfied with his theories completely, and he didn't even account for quantum physics in his stuff. He was all basing everything on relativity. He told us you can't go faster than the speed of light, which has been disproven. He didn't reconcile quantum physics, plasma physics. He wasn't hip to all this stuff, okay? And all of our ideas are based on his theories. And he completely ignored electric possibilities of the universe and electricity in the universe. So we have, like I said, we have all these magnetic fields everywhere in the universe. There's magnetism, right? In everything, all over, everywhere. The only thing that can produce magnetism is electricity. So somehow, is the sun an electrical anode, if you will? Is it, are comets electric? Are planets electric? All these things, we know of electromagnetism being everywhere. Okay, this is crazy stuff, man. This is really important, and it I can't, like I said, I can't explain it as good as anyone else, as other people, but you guys need to look into this stuff, because when you change your worldview based on researching a lot and coming up with different ideas about where we came from, our origins, you start to really get into that creative genius kind of mindset that can really expand your mindset, because the more and more you expand it, the less limited and dogmatic your ideas about yourself is, and everything around you is. So what else do I need to say here? you know, the comets are when we view comets, Halley's Comet, it's this cratered thing. If it was all this melting ice coming off, I mean, and it was like the comet was melting, it would be this smooth ice cream looking freaking rounded ice cream cone or something. But it's a very cratered thing, you know. It's these jets are coming off of electricity, it's not coming off in an evenly, you know, and their tails aren't producing an even tail. It's these jets that are coming off. So again, yes, I'm saying this is the new cosmology, possibilities of the new cosmology that may destroy our modern concepts, but this is really based on old astronomy, which is the mythology, and which is astrology, and which is things like that. The Greeks and the Romans and previous cultures, the Egyptians, the Sumerians, the Babylonians, okay, these people, the Chinese, stuff like that. So I don't know if I explained it perfectly, but the electric model of the universe, electric currents between planets, vast distances. We see this in nebula formations in telescopes. We can't explain them, okay? Pulsars. Pulsars don't make sense in our current explanation of them, that they're neutrino stars and that they are so dense they can hold all those neutrinos together and still rotate at a fast enough speed to create these pulsations of light coming off of them. That's what pulsars are. But they're describing them as these neutrino stars. But what we know is neutrinos cannot rotate at that speed, and they're not dense enough to hold together while doing that. So the electric model explains pulsars much better. It shows that pulsars are possible, okay? So again, electric discharges, plasma discharges, plasma conducting electricity between planets, creating the scarring on planets, creating all these crazy phenomena that we cannot explain that we're seeing in the universe. Black holes, everything you know could be wrong. So look into it. Go to Thunderbolts Project to check it out. Was Saturn a star previously? Was Jupiter a star previously? Was the ancient sky more alien than we think? Was it different than we see it now? Was the light more purple? Was Saturn a brown dwarf star? Did the light have this purplish hue, and the mist that coming up from the ground in the Garden of Eden stories, was that really the mist that Saturn's atmosphere was misting, a constant mist onto the earth? Was that occurring? A lot of this makes sense. So look into it. Check out my other video on Saturn. It's called The Ancient Secrets of Saturn and Capricorn, etc., etc. Check it out. I'll put a link below in the description to some of this stuff so you can check it. And I hope you enjoyed it. And as always, Collin Chi, certified nutritional consultant, numerologer, and now trying to be a little bit of a cosmologist, an astronomer, an astrologer. I try and do it all. I try to know all. Knowledge is power, folks. Rise.